Hello, story lovers. Tonight, we're diving into a tale of passion, secrets, and choices that could change everything. Hearts will be broken, love will be tested, and every twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Comment below where you're watching from. And if this story moves you, hit like, subscribe. Share it with someone who loves a powerful love story. And tap the bell so you never miss the next thrilling chapter. Ready? Let's begin. Asterisk, the autumn rain hammered against the grimy windows of Chicago's Greyhound station like bullets from heaven. Emma Rodriguez pressed her canvas bag against her ribs, feeling the sharp edges of rejection letters cutting through the fabric into her skin. At 28, she had learned that dreams died slowly, bleeding out through budget cuts and administrative indifference. Another arts program eliminated, she whispered to herself, watching her reflection fracture in the rain-streaked glass. 3 years of teaching had ended with a pink slip and hollow apologies about fiscal responsibility. Her sundress, faded from too many desperate washings, still carried the scent of her grandmother's lavender soap. The old woman's voice echoed in her memory. Confidence is a woman's finest armor. It's ya. But today that armor felt paper-thin. Across the station's chaos, Ryan Sterling paced like a caged wolf. His Armani suit cost more than most people's cars, yet he moved with the restless energy of someone who had everything and nothing at all. At 31, he commanded a tech empire worth billions. But success had carved hollows beneath his sharp cheekbones and left shadows in his piercing blue eyes. He clutched a leather messenger bag containing architectural plans for community centers. His latest attempt to fill the void where his humanity used to live. After his sister Jennifer's death 2 years ago, nothing felt real anymore. Not the board meetings, not the profits, not the endless parade of people who wanted pieces of his wealth. The boarding announcement crackled through speakers like breaking bones. Bodies surged toward the bus, a river of desperation and destinations. In the crush of movement, Emma helped an elderly woman with her suitcase when someone's shoulder caught her bag, sending it sliding across wet concrete toward a growing puddle. Strong fingers intercepted it mid-flight. "Careful," Ryan said, his voice rougher than he intended. Their hands touched as she took the bag back. The contact sent electricity racing up Emma's arm, and for a heartbeat the chaos around them dissolved. His eyes held depths. She recognized the same drowning she saw in her own mirror. "Thank you," she breathed. "Ryan," he said, extending his hand. "Emma." The bus driver's horn shattered the moment. They boarded in a rush of bodies and baggage, Emma claiming a seat in back while Ryan settled near the front. Neither noticed they had grabbed the wrong bag in their hurry. 3 hours later, Emma climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment above, Miller's flower shop. The space was small, but filled with her paintings, explosions, of color against exposed brick walls that caught light like hope itself. She dropped onto her second-hand couch and reached for her sketchbook, desperate to lose herself in lines and shading. Instead, her fingers found items that made her heart stutter. A Mont Blanc pen worth more than her rent. Sterling tech documents. Architectural plans for community centers. And at the bottom, wrapped in silk like a prayer, a velvet box. Inside lay a delicate necklace with a paintbrush pendant, and beneath it, letter on cream stationery that made her hands shake. "My dearest Jennifer, I know I failed you. When Mom and Dad died, I became a machine instead of your brother. This necklace was hers. She always said it would belong to the artist in our family. You were right about art school. I was wrong about everything. These community centers are my way of honoring what you tried to teach me about creativity and human souls. I hope wherever you are, you can forgive the brother who forgot how to love anything but success." Ryan Emma's tears fell onto the letter, smearing the ink. She was holding someone's shattered heart, a billionaire's desperate attempt to resurrect his dead sister's dreams. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan's dark waters, Ryan stared at Emma's open bag like it contained fragments of a lost world. Her sketchbooks revealed a universe of beauty he had forgotten existed, children's laughter captured in charcoal, elderly couples holding hands like lifelines, cityscapes that breathed with urban poetry. But one half-finished painting stopped his breath completely. It showed a businessman in an expensive suit standing in a crowd, his face a mask of profound loneliness despite being surrounded by people. The emotional depth of the piece suggested an artist who understood the price of success better than his own therapists ever had. At the bottom of the bag, he found her address and a business card. Rodriguez Art Tutoring, bringing creativity to life. His phone buzzed with messages about tomorrow's board meeting. But for the first time in years, Ryan found himself more interested in the story behind these sketches than in quarterly profits. As midnight settled over both Chicago and Millbrook, Emma rewrapped the necklace with trembling fingers while Ryan stood at his floor-to-ceiling windows. Holding her painting up to the city lights, both had made the same decision. They needed to return these bags. But more than that, they felt drawn to the person whose private world they had accidentally glimpsed. Neither could sleep that night, unaware that fate had just dealt them cards in a game where the stakes would prove higher than either could imagine. Emma stared at her ceiling, wondering what kind of man carried his dead sister's necklace like penance. Ryan watched the city's pulse through his windows, haunted by artwork that made him remember what it felt like to dream. The accidental exchange of bags was just the beginning. Dawn broke over Millbrook like spilled honey. Golden light streaming through Emma's windows as she sat at her kitchen table, the velvet box open before her. She had spent the night researching Ryan Sterling online, finding a man whose success story read like a fairy tale written in blood and ambition. Forbes called him a visionary. Business Weekly labeled him ruthless. But the letter in her hands revealed someone else entirely, a brother drowning in guilt. Using community centers as lifelines to his lost humanity, the sound of an expensive engine purring outside made her freeze. Through her window, she watched a black Tesla park between Mrs. Chun's rusted Honda and Jake's pickup truck like a panther among housecats. Ryan Sterling stepped out. And even in the morning light of small-town America, he looked like he had been carved from different clay than everyone else. His dark hair caught sunlight like silk, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. But his blue eyes held the same lost quality she had glimpsed at the bus station. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as footsteps climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment. When the knock came, soft but insistent, she almost didn't answer. Emma. His voice through the door carried an uncertainty that billionaires weren't supposed to possess. She opened it, and they stood facing each other like gunslingers in an old western, each holding the other's bag. "I believe this belongs to you," he said, offering her canvas bag with careful hands. "And this is yours." She held out his leather messenger bag, their fingers brushing again as they made the exchange. The electricity was still there, crackling between them like a live wire. "Would you like some coffee?" The words escaped before she could stop them. His smile transformed his entire face, erasing years of corporate armor. "I'd like that very much." Her kitchen was the size of his walk-in closet. But as she poured coffee into mismatched mugs, Ryan found himself studying the paintings covering every wall. They were windows into a soul that saw beauty where others saw only ordinary life. "You read the letter," he said. It wasn't a question. Emma's cheeks flushed crimson. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. But you wanted to understand who you were helping." He accepted the coffee mug, wrapping his fingers around its warmth. Jennifer would have done the same thing. Tell me about her. The simple request hit him like a physical blow. She was everything I'm not. Brave, passionate. She saw art as salvation, and I saw it as impractical dreaming. His voice cracked. The last conversation we had was a fight about her choosing art school over business. She died 2 weeks later in a car accident. And those angry words are the last thing I'll ever say to her. Emma set down her mug and moved closer. Close enough to see the tears he was fighting. "She knew you loved her, Ryan. Sisters always know. How can you be so sure?" "Because you're here. You're building community centers to honor her memory. You're carrying her necklace like a promise." Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. Guilt and love aren't the same thing, but sometimes they wear identical faces. Something shifted in Ryan's chest. A tectonic movement that made breathing difficult. This woman, this struggling artist with paint under her fingernails and rent money in her checking account. understood him better than anyone ever had. "I want to show you something," he said suddenly. 20 minutes later, they were in his Tesla, driving toward the outskirts of Millbrook. Emma had never been in a car that cost more than her yearly income. But what struck her wasn't the luxury, it was how Ryan's shoulders relaxed as they left the town behind, as if he could finally breathe outside the suffocating expectations of his world. He pulled up to a vacant lot where construction equipment sat like sleeping giants under tarps. "Future Millbrook Community Arts Center," he said. "Groundbreaking was supposed to start next month, but the local residents are fighting it. They think I'm some corporate predator trying to gentrify their neighborhood." Emma studied the architectural plans spread across the Tesla's hood. The building was beautiful, all glass and clean lines designed to let in maximum natural light. But it looked nothing like Millbrook, nothing like the community it was meant to serve. "It's gorgeous," she said carefully, but it doesn't belong here. It's like putting a diamond tiara on a farm girl. Beautiful, but wrong for who she is." Ryan's jaw tightened. "My architects are the best in the country. I'm sure they are. But do they know that Mrs. Martinez runs a tamale cart every Friday outside the old community center? Do they know that teenagers gather behind Johnson's hardware store to paint murals because they have nowhere else to express themselves?" Her words hit him like accusations. "Then what would you do differently?" Emma pulled out a pencil and began sketching on the back of the plans. Her hands moved with confident strokes, transforming the sterile structure into something organic, something that belonged to Millbrook's soul. Lower ceilings, warmer materials, multiple smaller studios instead of one grand space, a kitchen for community dinners, gallery walls where local artists can display their work. She looked up at him, her brown eyes blazing with passion. "A place that serves the community instead of impressing it." Ryan stared at her sketch, feeling something crack open in his chest. "You'd redesign the entire project?" "If you'd let me." The words hung between them like a challenge. In that moment, Ryan realized he was standing at a crossroads that had nothing to do with architecture and everything to do with the way Emma's passion made his carefully constructed world feel hollow. "There's a board meeting tomorrow," he said slowly. "The investors are expecting to see progress reports and profit projections. And I'm thinking about telling them the project needs a complete overhaul, based on the recommendations of a local artist they've never heard of." Emma's breath caught. "That could cost you millions. It could cost me everything." His blue eyes met hers with an intensity that made her knees weak. "But losing Jennifer taught me that some things are worth more than money." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "I have a proposition for you." "Emma Rodriguez, I'm listening. Come to Chicago with me. Help me redesign not just this project, but all of them. Be my partner in making these centers what Jennifer would have wanted them to be." The offer hung in the autumn air like a promise and a threat. Emma's heart pounded as she realized she was being offered everything she had ever dreamed of: creative control, unlimited resources, the chance to bring art to communities that needed it most. But something in Ryan's eyes warned her that accepting would change everything. That stepping into his world would cost more than she could imagine. When she whispered, double quotes, "Now, today. My jet is waiting at the regional airport." Emma looked at the sketch in her hands, then at the man whose broken soul called to hers like a siren song. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour, marking time until she would have to choose between the safety of her small life and the dangerous promise of something extraordinary. "Okay," she said, the word escaping before her rational mind could intervene. Ryan's smile was brilliant and terrifying, like staring directly into the sun. "Pack light," he said. "Where we're going, everything will be different." The Sterling Tech building pierced Chicago's skyline like a gleaming sword, all glass and ambition reaching toward heaven. Emma pressed her palm against the Tesla's window as they approached, her reflection ghost-like against the approaching tower. "Having second thoughts?" Ryan asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Third and fourth thoughts," she admitted. "But I'm still here." The private elevator to the 62nd floor moved so smoothly, Emma felt like she was floating. Ryan stood beside her, his presence filling the small space with electricity that had nothing to do with the building's power grid. In the last 3 days, they had worked 18-hour days redesigning community center plans, their creative energy feeding off each other like wildfire. But there were moments when their hands brushed over architectural drawings, when she caught him staring at her with an intensity that made her skin burn, that suggested their partnership was becoming something far more dangerous. The elevator doors opened to reveal a boardroom that belonged in a museum. 20 executives in identical suits sat around a mahogany table the size of Emma's entire apartment, their faces expressing polite skepticism at her presence. "Gentlemen," Ryan said, his voice carrying the authority of absolute power. "Meet Emma Rodriguez, our new creative director for community outreach." The silence stretched like a held breath. Emma felt their assessment like physical weight, her thrift store blazer, paint-stained fingernails, her complete lack of Ivy League credentials. "Ryan," said a silver-haired man at the table's head, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No need, Harrison." Ryan's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Emma has some revolutionary ideas about making our community centers actually serve communities." For the next hour, Emma presented her redesigns, watching faces that revealed nothing while her heart hammered against her ribs. She spoke about art as salvation, about communities that needed healing, about buildings that should embrace rather than intimidate. When she finished, the silence was deafening. "Ms. Rodriguez," Harrison said finally, "these are certainly interesting concepts. However, our investors expect returns on their contributions. Your designs would increase costs by 40% while reducing potential revenue streams." Emma felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Revenue streams? These are supposed to be community centers, not profit machines. Everything is a profit machine. Ms. Rodriguez, that's how the world works. That's how your world works," she shot back, her grandmother's fire blazing in her eyes. "But maybe your world is exactly what's wrong with Emma." Ryan's voice cut through her anger like a blade. When she looked at him, his blue eyes held a warning that chilled her blood. The meeting ended with polite dismissals and promises to review the proposals. As the executives filed out, Emma felt the weight of their disapproval like a physical presence. "That went well," she said bitterly when they were alone. Ryan was staring out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the city below, his hands clasped behind his back. "You think I don't know what they're saying about me? That I'm having a midlife crisis? Letting some small-town artists cloud my judgment? Is that what this is? A midlife crisis?" He turned, and the raw vulnerability in his face took her breath away. "I don't know what this is, Emma. All I know is that for the first time in 2 years, I care about something more than quarterly reports." The space between them crackled with unspoken promises. Emma felt herself being pulled toward him like gravity, felt the dangerous magnetism of a man who could give her everything she had ever wanted and destroy her in the process. "Ryan," she whispered. He crossed the room in 3 strides, backing her against the conference table. His hands framed her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones with reverent precision. "Tell me to stop," he breathed, his lips inches from hers. Instead, she rose on her toes and kissed him. The kiss was fire and desperation, 2 broken souls recognizing their reflection in each other. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer as if he could merge their very atoms. Emma's world narrowed to the taste of him, feeling of his heart pounding against her chest, the way he kissed her like she was salvation itself. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "This complicates things," he said, his forehead resting against hers. "Everything about us is complicated." His phone buzzed with an incoming message. Ryan glanced at the screen and his face went stone cold. "What is it?" "My investigator's report on you just came in." Emma felt ice flood her veins. "You're what?" Ryan's expression was unreadable as he scrolled through the message. "I have everyone in my life investigated, Emma. It's standard practice. You had me investigated?" "Before I brought you into my company, yes." His voice was carefully controlled. But she could see the storm building in his eyes. "Imagine my surprise to learn that you're not just some struggling artist who happened to grab the wrong..." bag. Emma's mouth went dry. Ryan. Can you explain why you never mentioned that your ex-boyfriend Marcus Williams works for Harrison's investment firm? Can you explain why you had coffee with him 2 days before the bus station meeting? Can you explain why there's a record of him transferring $10,000 to your account the day after we met? The words hit her like physical blows. Emma gripped the table edge to keep from falling as her world tilted off its axis. You think I was planted? You think this was all some elaborate setup? $10,000, Emma? From my board member's employee to your bank account? The same board member who's been trying to block my community center projects from the beginning? Money isn't what you think? Then what is it? Emma closed her eyes, feeling tears burn behind her lids. Marcus is my ex, yes. But the money. The money is what he owed me from our relationship. Rent, utilities, groceries. He disappeared 2 years ago and left me with nothing. He finally paid me back because he's getting married. His fiancée wanted his debts cleared. Ryan's jaw worked silently. In the coffee meeting? He called me, said he had something that belonged to me. I thought it might be my grandmother's ring that went missing when he left. She looked up at him with desperate eyes. I never even knew he worked for Harrison until you told me just now. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to trust me. I expect the man who just kissed me like his life depended on it to know that I would never... Her voice cracked. How can you think I would use Jennifer's memory like that? Something flickered in Ryan's eyes at his sister's name, but his face remained granite hard. I've learned not to trust my feelings when it comes to business. Is that what I am to you? Business. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Emma felt something precious and fragile shatter inside her chest. I see, she said quietly. The billionaire boy who cried wolf. You're so used to people wanting something from you that you can't recognize it when someone just wants you. She gathered her purse and the dignity she had left. I'll have my resignation on your desk within the hour, Emma. Wait. But she was already walking toward the elevator, her heels clicking against marble like gunshots. As the doors closed between them, Ryan saw his own reflection in the polished steel and realized he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But by then, it was too late. Emma rode the elevator down 62 floors, watching the numbers descend like a countdown to her broken heart. When the doors opened to the lobby, she walked out into the Chicago afternoon feeling like she was leaving pieces of herself scattered across Ryan Sterling's boardroom floor. Behind her, 62 floors up. Ryan stood at his window, watching her tiny figure disappear into the crowd. His hands pressed against the glass like a man watching his salvation walk away. His phone buzzed with another message from his investigator. Follow-up report. Coffee meeting was brief and appeared confrontational. Williams seemed agitated when subject left. Further investigation confirms her story about outstanding debts. Ryan closed his eyes and let his head fall against the cool glass. He had just destroyed the only real thing in his life because he was too broken to believe in it. 3 weeks passed like winter. Emma threw herself into substitute teaching at Millbrook Elementary. Spending her evenings painting portraits she would never show anyone, all blue eyes and sharp jawlines and the ghost of what might have been. She had moved on. At least, that's what she told herself every morning while drinking coffee from the mug Ryan had held in her kitchen. The one she couldn't bring herself to put away. The knock on her door came at midnight on a Tuesday, soft but insistent. Emma opened it to find Ryan standing in her hallway like a man who had walked through hell to get there. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive suit wrinkled, his blue eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. I fired Harrison, he said without preamble. Ryan, what are you doing here? I fired Harrison and Marcus Williams, and 3 other board members who were systematically sabotaging my community. Projects to protect their real estate investments. He stepped closer, and she could smell whiskey on his breath. Turns out your ex-boyfriend was feeding information to investors who wanted to buy up properties cheap before gentrification hit. Emma wrapped her arms around herself, her oversized sweatshirt providing little protection against the intensity of his presence. That still doesn't explain why you're in my hallway at midnight. I'm here because I've spent 3 weeks trying to convince myself that I did the right thing. that it's better to be alone than to risk being betrayed again. His voice cracked. But I can't paint, Emma. I can't sleep. I can't think about anything but the way you looked at me when I accused you of using Jennifer's memory, Ryan. I'm here because I found this in Jennifer's things. He held out a worn sketchbook, and Emma's breath caught. The cover was identical to her own. Down to the small tear in the lower left corner, she used to sit in coffee shops and draw people. He continued, just like you do. She saw beauty in ordinary moments and tried to capture it on paper. He opened the book, revealing page after page of sketches that could have been Emma's work. I found this drawing tucked in the back. The sketch showed a businessman in an expensive suit standing alone in a crowd, his face a mask of profound isolation. It was nearly identical to the painting Ryan had found in Emma's bag. But this one bore Jennifer's signature. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. She drew you. She drew who I was becoming. 2 weeks before she died, she left this on my desk with a note that said, "This is who you are now. I hope someday you remember who you used to be." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. "Ryan, I'm so sorry, don't you see?" She knew. Jennifer knew that someday I would need someone to remind me how to be human again. She knew I would need someone who saw the world the way she did. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I think she led me to that bus station. I think she put you in my path because she knew you were the only person who could save me from myself," Emma felt her carefully constructed walls crumbling. "You can't just show up here and I love you." The words hung in the air like a confession and a prayer. Emma felt her heart stutter, then race like a hummingbird's wings. "You don't mean that? I've never meant anything more in my life." He cupped her face in his hands, thumbs wiping away her tears. "I love the way you see art everywhere. I love that you fight for communities you barely know. I love that you're brave enough to challenge me, to tell me when I'm wrong, to make me want to be better than I am. Ryan, you're drunk. I'm drunk on you, Emma. I have been since the moment you took my hand at that bus station." His forehead pressed against hers. "Come back to Chicago with me. Not as my employee, but as my partner. Help me build something beautiful." Emma closed her eyes, feeling the gravitational pull of his words. Everything in her wanted to say yes, to fall into his arms and let herself believe in fairy tales, but something held her back. "There's something you need to know first," she said quietly. Ryan pulled back to look at her. "What?" Emma took a shuddering breath. "The community center in Millbrook, the one you're building, the town council met yesterday and voted to cancel the project." "What?" "That's impossible. I have contracts. Marcus Williams convinced them that you were using the center as a tax write-off. You'd abandon the project once you got the deductions. They're voting to sell the land to a developer who wants to build luxury condos." Ryan's face went white. "Emma, you have to believe me. That was never my intention. I know. But they don't. And there's more." Emma's voice broke. "They offered me a position on the new development committee. A real salary, benefits, everything I've been struggling for. And I haven't given them an answer yet." The silence stretched. Between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. Ryan studied her face, seeing the war being fought in her dark eyes. "Are you going to take it?" "That depends on what?" Emma met his gaze with something that looked like courage and felt like terror. "On whether you're willing to sacrifice everything to prove that you meant what you said." "I don't. Understand. The town council will reconsider if you agree to their conditions. You have to give up all control of the project. Turn it over to local leadership, local contractors, local artists. You fund it, but you don't run it. You trust us to build something worthy of Jennifer's memory." Ryan felt the ground shift beneath his feet. "You're asking me to write a check for millions of dollars and walk away. I'm asking you to choose between control and love, between the businessman who needs to own everything and the brother who wants to honor his sister's legacy." The weight of her challenge pressed down on him like gravity. Everything in his business-trained mind screamed that it was madness, that he would be throwing away millions on a project he couldn't control, trusting people he barely knew with his sister's memory, but looking into Emma's eyes. He realized she wasn't just asking him to trust the town council, she was asking him to trust her. "If I do this," he said slowly, "if I sign over control of the project, will you come back to Chicago with me? Will you help me turn all of the Sterling Foundation projects into something Jennifer would have been proud of?" "If you do this," Emma replied, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "I'll follow you anywhere." Ryan closed his eyes and made a decision that would either save his soul or cost him everything. "Where do I sign?" Emma's smile was like sunrise after the longest night. She rose on her toes and kissed him, pouring 2 years of loneliness and 3 weeks of heartbreak into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. "There's a town council emergency meeting tomorrow morning," she whispered against his lips. "Then I guess I'm not sleeping tonight." "Good," Emma said, pulling him into her apartment and closing the door behind them. "Neither am I," as they fell into each other's arms. Neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the street, or the telephoto lens capturing their reunion through Emma's window by morning. Their moment of perfect happiness would become a weapon designed to destroy everything they had built together. The Millbrook Town Council meeting was standing room only. Emma sat in the front row, her hand clasped tightly in Ryan's, as he prepared to address the crowd that would decide the fate of Jennifer's dream. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ryan began, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms, but tempered with humility Emma had taught him. "I'm here to make you an offer that goes against everything I was trained to believe about business." He pulled out a legal document thick as a small book. "I'm prepared to transfer full control of the Millbrook Community Arts Center to this council, to be managed by local leadership with input from community members. Sterling Tech will provide funding with no strings attached, no oversight requirements, and no profit expectations." The murmur that rippled through the crowd was electric. Emma squeezed his hand, her heart swelling with pride at his courage. "Furthermore," Ryan continued, "I'd like to propose Emma Rodriguez as project director, with full authority to hire local contractors, artists, and staff." That's when Emma's phone buzzed with a text message that made her blood turn to ice. "Check your email. You have 5 minutes to get Sterling out of there before I release these photos to every news outlet in the country." Which, shaking fingers, Emma opened her email. The photos were devastating, her and Ryan embracing in her apartment, kissing by her window, their bodies entwined in silhouette against her bedroom curtains. The timestamp showed they were taken the night before, and the angles suggested professional surveillance equipment. The follow-up message was even worse. "Sterling's board of directors have voted no confidence. If he signs that document, they'll claim mental incompetence and seize control of his company. The photos prove he's being manipulated by his lover. Get him out now or watch everything burn." Emma's world tilted. She looked at Ryan, who was fielding questions from council members with patient grace. Completely unaware that his entire empire was about to collapse, she had less than 4 minutes to make a choice that would determine both their futures. Tugging on his sleeve, he turned to her, his blue eyes bright with hope. "What is it?" Emma felt her heart shattered as she realized what she had to do. To save him, she would have to destroy herself. To protect his legacy and Jennifer's memory, she would have to become the villain in their love story. "I can't do this," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. Ryan's face went white. "What?" Emma stood up, every eye in the room following her movement. "This whole thing was a mistake. I can't be responsible for a project this big. I'm not qualified and everyone knows it." "Emma, what are you talking about?" She looked into his eyes and forced herself to lie with every ounce of conviction she possessed. "I was using you, Ryan. You were right the first time. The coffee meeting with Marcus, the convenient bag mix-up, all of it. I'm sorry, but I can't keep pretending anymore." The room erupted in whispers and gasps. Ryan stared at her like she had physically struck him, his face cycling through confusion, hurt, and finally, a cold fury that made her want to disappear. "You're lying," he said quietly. "I'm done lying." "That's the point." Emma forced herself to look at the council members. "Mr. Sterling's generous offer stands, but I withdraw my name from consideration. Find someone else to run your center. Someone who actually cares about this community instead of just seeing dollar signs." She walked toward the exit. each step feeling like she was tearing pieces of her soul and leaving them on the floor behind her. Ryan caught up with her in the parking lot, his hand closing around her arm with desperate strength. "Don't you dare walk away from me again," he said. "Not like this. Not with lies." Emma jerked free, forcing herself to meet his eyes with cold indifference she didn't feel. "It's not lies, Ryan. It's reality. I'm a small-town art teacher who saw an opportunity and took it. You're a billionaire who confused loneliness with love. That's not true, isn't it? Look around you." She gestured toward the council building where people were streaming out, their voices carrying fragments of gossip and speculation. "Look what we've done to each other. Your board is probably in emergency session right now, planning to remove you for mental incompetence. My reputation in this town is destroyed. Was a few weeks of playing house really worth all this damage?" Ryan's face went ashen. "How did you know about the board?" Emma realized her mistake too late. She had revealed knowledge she shouldn't possess. Ryan's sharp mind was already connecting dots she couldn't let him connect. "Lucky guess," she said weakly. "No, someone told you." His blue eyes blazed with sudden understanding. "Someone's been feeding you information, and they're using it to manipulate you into walking away. You're being paranoid, Marcus." Ryan's voice was deadly quiet. "He's behind this, isn't he? He's been orchestrating this whole thing from the beginning." Emma's silence was confirmation enough. "What does he have on you, Emma? What's he threatening you with?" For a moment, Emma wavered. She wanted desperately to tell him everything, to show him the photos, and let him decide how to fight back. But the image of his empire crumbling, of Jennifer's memory being dragged through tabloid mud, strengthened her resolve. "He doesn't have anything on me," she lied. "This is my choice." Ryan stared at her for a long moment, his expression cycling through hurt and fury before settling into something that looked like acceptance. When he spoke again, his voice was empty of all emotion. "Then I guess there's nothing left to say." He turned and walked back toward the building, his shoulders straight with the bearing of a man who had survived worse betrayals. Emma watched him go, biting her lip hard enough to taste blood as she fought not to call after him. Inside the council building, Ryan signed the documents, transferring control of the community center with mechanical precision. His hand never trembled, his voice never wavered as he answered the remaining questions. But when he left an hour later, something fundamental had changed in his eyes. Emma was gone by then, having driven her ancient Honda toward Chicago with tears streaming down her face and Marcus Williams' phone number blocked on her phone. 6 months later, the Millbrook Community Arts Center opened to crowds of families and children, their laughter echoing through spaces designed with Emma's vision but built without her presence. Local artists displayed their work in galleries that bore no trace of Sterling Tech's corporate fingerprints, exactly as she had dreamed it should be. Ryan stood at the back of the opening ceremony, anonymous in dark sunglasses and a baseball cap. He watched children paint murals on walls that welcomed rather than intimidated, saw elderly couples dancing to music performed by teenagers who had found their voices in rooms funded by his grief and Emma's. Sacrifice Jennifer would have loved it. As the celebration reached its peak, Ryan noticed a small plaque by the main entrance that he hadn't authorized. It read, "In memory of Jennifer Sterling, who believed art could save the world, and in honor of Emma Rodriguez, who proved her right." His hands shook as he traced the letters of Emma's name. A year after that, Ryan received a package with no return address. Inside was a painting that took his breath away. Jennifer, as a young girl, sitting at an easel with paint-stained fingers and joy blazing in her eyes. In the corner, barely visible, was Emma's signature. On the back, in handwriting he recognized, like his own heartbeat, were the words, "Some sacrifices are worth making. Some loves are worth protecting, even from ourselves. Thank you for giving her back to the world." Ryan hung the painting in his office where it caught morning light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. Sometimes when board meetings grew too cold and profit margins felt more important than human souls, he would look at Jennifer's painted, smile, and remember what Emma had taught him about the difference between success and meaning. He never tried to find her. Love, he had learned, sometimes meant knowing when to let someone go. But late at night, when Chicago's lights blurred into watercolors outside his window, Ryan Sterling would dream of autumn rain and bus stations, of hands that touched briefly and changed everything, of a woman who had loved him enough to save him from himself. And in a small apartment above a flower shop in a town called Millbrook, Emma Rodriguez would paint portraits of blue eyes and sharp jawlines, of a man who had taught her that the most beautiful art comes from the most broken hearts. They never saw each other again. But every child who found their voice in those community centers, every elderly person who discovered painting could ease arthritis pain, every teenager who learned that creativity was rebellion against despair, they all carried pieces of a love story written in sacrifice and signed with invisible hearts. Some stories don't end with kisses and wedding bells. Some end with two people choosing to love each other enough to stay apart, their sacrifice becoming the foundation for something larger than themselves. In the end, Emma and Ryan got exactly what they had wished for on that rainy day at the bus station. They had saved each other, just not in the way they had expected. The community centers thrived. Jennifer's memory lived on in laughter and paint-stained hands and dreams given room to grow. And somewhere in the space between what was and what might have been, love endured. In its most perfect form, untested by time, unmarked by disappointment, eternal as art itself. The end.